What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we're going to be revisiting the two MP5s that we have access to in Warzone, since the recent Season 4 Reloaded update completely changed a bunch of things around. Before this update, both MP5s were pretty solid, but it was generally accepted that the Cold War MP5 was the better option overall. However, there were some nerfs to the Cold War MP5 with this recent update, so I want to see if it is still the better option, or if you're now better off with the Modern Warfare version of the MP5. So let's first start it off with the nerf to the Cold War MP5. The first thing is in the maximum damage range, they decreased the torso damage from 33 down to 31. This means against 3 armor plates, it used to be an 8-shot kill, now it's going to take you 9 shots to kill. And then at longer ranges, previously this would take 10 shots to kill to the torso, and now the damage has been cut back, so it's going to be an 11-shot to kill to the torso. Meanwhile, the Modern Warfare MP5 wasn't touched, at least based on the patch notes. I've done a little bit of basic testing. Everything appears to be the same so far based on what I can see. So this is why I feel this video is quite important. But now let's hop right into the comparison here, and we'll start it off with our damage values and time to kill. Currently, we deal 31 damage to the torso up close and 24 at a distance for the Cold War MP5, whereas the Modern Warfare MP5 now deals more damage up close at 34, but less damage at the longest ranges at 22. And then, speaking of ranges, our maximum damage range on the Cold War MP5 is still 9 meters, whereas the Modern Warfare MP5 is 9.5. Honestly, this is a pretty negligible difference, so I wouldn't go so far as to say that the Modern Warfare MP5 has a much better damage range or anything like that. But then, taking a look at our rate of fire, this is a little bit faster on the Cold War MP5 at 856 rounds per minute, compared to the Modern Warfare MP5's 800 round per minute. And what all of this means for our time to kill potential is up close in the maximum damage range, where you typically should be using an SMG, the Modern Warfare MP5 now kills faster at 525 milliseconds. At the longest ranges, however, this is where the Cold War MP5 does have a better time to kill potential at 701 milliseconds, whereas the Modern Warfare MP5 is 825 milliseconds, so noticeably slower. But there's more to look into with this, and then also keep in mind these are SMGs, and I'm mainly comparing these within SMG ranges where you should be using them more often than not. So when it comes to selecting an SMG, I care much more about its close range time to kill than its longer range time to kill, and therefore it's looking pretty good for the Modern Warfare MP5. Next up, let's have a look at headshots, because there is something quite interesting with these damage changes. Now, for both of these SMGs, all you need is one single headshot mixed in with body shots at close range as well as the longest ranges in order to reduce the number of shots to kill. And so if we do that and we mix that one headshot in, we can see our new time to kill potentials, which with the Cold War MP5, it's 491 milliseconds up close, whereas the Modern Warfare MP5 is still faster at 450 milliseconds. Both of these are incredibly fast time to kill values though, with the current balancing of the weapons. And then at longer ranges, once again, the Cold War MP5 is going to be killing faster than the Modern Warfare version. But speaking about longer ranges, this is where I want to dive into Recoil, and this is where the Modern Warfare MP5 does have a pretty noticeable advantage. When having a look at these side by side with the Cold War MP5, I'm using the Agency Suppressor as well as the Field Agent Grip in order to get that recoil pattern, and then with the Modern Warfare MP5, the only attachment I'm using that affects recoil is the Commando Grip. And you can see there, the Cold War MP5 has a pretty high magnitude of recoil. It kicks upward really strong, really fast, so you do have to really get on top of that recoil quickly. And I personally find this much more difficult to control and predict at longer ranges. I would much rather be using a Modern Warfare MP5 for a mid to somewhat longer range fight, even though, like I said earlier, the Cold War MP5 kills faster. It doesn't matter if it's killing faster if you're not hitting your shots as effectively. So yeah, once again, this is another area where I straight up just prefer the Modern Warfare MP5. And then I wanted to get into bullet velocity, just to show you guys that with our base bullet velocity values, the Modern Warfare MP5 has the clear advantage here. However, when we look at our potential bullet velocity values, they're pretty much exactly the same. Keeping in mind, this is using the Cold War MP5 with the Agency Suppressor and the Liberator barrel, which gives us the best velocity. But a lot of people also like using the Task Force barrel, which gives us a bullet velocity of about 640 meters per second. So it's still right up there. It's pretty much the same. It's very, very similar. And then with the Modern Warfare MP5, this is with the Monolithic Integral Suppressor, which you should 100% be using. Don't ever use the standard Monolithic Suppressor. You're always better off with the Monolithic Integral Suppressor. And therefore, you only have to use one attachment to reach this bullet velocity potential, whereas with the Cold War MP5, you have to use 2 attachments for that. But finally, for this comparison, I just wanted to look at our handling and movement speeds as well, and I basically just wanted to show you that these are essentially the same in all of these areas. Now, our aim down sight time appears to be very slightly slower on the Cold War MP5, but I was also getting slightly inconsistent results with the Modern Warfare MP5. Sometimes it was 217 milliseconds, sometimes it was 200. So the difference there is pretty much negligible, and then everything else is basically the same here. So yeah, after looking at all of these important stats with both of these MP5s, it's pretty clear that after this update, the Cold War MP5 has sort of fallen off, and since the Modern Warfare MP5 didn't change at all, it's now the better option out of these two, at least in my opinion. Now, having said that, I don't think the Cold War MP5 is completely useless now and you should never touch it and it's horrible. It's still a very decent and usable SMG. I just think it's no longer the best bet, and you are better off with the Modern Warfare version of this gun. And if you guys are looking for some great attachment combinations on the Modern Warfare MP5, here's just a couple recommendations I have. The nice thing about this is you can actually go several different ways with this gun. However, I would say for Warzone, there are two attachments that you should lock in with your Modern Warfare MP5, and these should always be on your gun no matter what you're doing with it. The first one is the monolithic integral suppressor. Like I said, this is just clearly better than using the standard monolithic suppressor in the muzzle attachment, and therefore you should always have it equipped for Warzone. And then, of course, second is going to be the 45 round mag, just because it's nice to have that extra magazine capacity for dealing with armored enemies. Outside of that, though, it's fairly open. I would typically recommend one of two different underbarrel attachments, but that does depend on what you're going for with the gun. So let's say we're going to be using it as a more versatile, maybe a sniper support option, or something that you maybe want to stretch your range out a little bit with. With this, I'd recommend using the Commando foregrip to cut down on that side-to-side bounce. Then I would actually use an optic, whatever optic you personally prefer. I really like the Solo Zero Mini Reflex for an SMG if I'm going to be using an optic. And then the tac laser. I'm going to throw that on there as well. This allows you to have a much snappier aim down sight time, but mainly this basically eliminates any sort of idle sway, which is going to help a lot with your accuracy at longer ranges as well. And there you go. That's a great sniper support option with the MP5, but that's just one way of running it. Another option, another thing you could do with this is instead of the Commando foregrip, we could go with the Merc foregrip, because we're going to go for a hipfire build, which means we're also using the 5 milliwatt laser. And with that combination of those two attachments, this thing is insane at hip firing. So really, really good in those areas. And then for our final attachment on this kind of a setup, we could be using the collapsible stock to help with our movement speed, as well as get a bit of a snappier aim down sight speed, since we don't really need to worry about our recoil control all that much in really close quarters, especially while hip firing. Or if you don't want to do that, you could run one of the perks. Maybe you could use sleight of hand if you wanted to, or maybe this could be a fully loaded setup for you. There are a ton of different ways that you can set this MP5 up, which is another reason that I love the Modern Warfare version of this gun. With the Cold War MP5, I feel like there's really only one or maybe two attachments that I would ever swap out if I'm going for optimal performance. So it just doesn't seem to have that same versatility of attachments as the Modern Warfare version. So yeah, there you have it. That's going to wrap it up for today's video. Personally, I do think the Modern Warfare MP5 is now one of the best SMGs to be using after all of the nerfs to a lot of the other SMGs. And if you guys haven't given it a shot yet after the Season 4 Reloaded update, I'd highly recommend doing so. Now, of course, I do want to hear from you guys, though. What do you think about this comparison? Do you think the Modern Warfare MP5 is clearly the better option now compared to the Cold War version? Or do you still like the Cold War version more? And then also, what is your favorite SMG to use so far after this update? Just let me know those thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.